Hi, my name's Ash, and welcome to Paved with Gold, the eating disorder recovery podcast. I want to acknowledge the traditional landowners on which I'm recording, the Gadigal people. There's clearly a change with this intro, and I'd initially had crafted this intro that would lead straight into the episode at first, but we need to do some housekeeping. So when you're listening to this, Callie is days away from giving birth to her second baby, and I know you are all with me in wishing her a safe delivery. And by the time you hear this, she very well may be with child. And that's why you're just hearing me, Ash, for now. We wanted to keep the pod going and sticking to a regular schedule as best we can, at least for now, while Callie is on parental leave. And she will pop in when it's possible for her, of course. But of course, we wanted to give her as much time off as she needs. She might pop in, she might not. I think it's very much touch and go based on how she's feeling and how all the time that she has with baby. But it's obviously very weird for me to just be talking seemingly to myself, but I know that you're all listening, so it feels like I'm talking to a friend. I know a single person isn't ideal, and it's a change of pace from what we're normally doing, but there will be guests in future episodes, so there will be banter back and forth, so bear with us for now, but we still wanted the show to continue on in some shape or form, and I will, of course, keep you updated with all things Callie news as we go, and we will be very excited to have her back when she is ready. So just bear with us, and I hope you'll enjoy a different sort of style of episode, but we will be back to regular Paved with Gold recordings as soon as Callie is ready. Now, on with the show. Cue my carefully curated intro. Everything happens for a reason. Just be happy. Good vibes only. Look on the bright side. You just got to get over it, or just think positive. If you shudder and have as just a visceral reaction as I do when you hear this kind of stuff, you're in good company. Because today we are talking about toxic positivity. And I'm going to talk about what this is, why it's trash, and how we can deal with it. This is something that's a really big bugbear of mine, and I get very worked up about this. And I know Callie does too, and she regularly talks about it over on her Instagram. And I know she was gutted that she was missing this record because she has a lot of opinions about this. So I will try and do it justice. Just imagine Callie being outraged in the corner. It is rife in the eating disorder recovery space and recovery in general. And gosh, even just in society, it's just everywhere. And we all know why. It's because one, it makes money. You've seen those just choose happiness tote bags. And two, because it provides a temporary distraction, deflection, and scapegoat for the fact that life is filled with uncomfortable emotions. And it's just got to stop because it is not helping anybody. I guess the reason I wanted to do this episode is because I've had a lot of stuff go on in my life recently. And, I do have, a history of trauma in my life. And every time that I try and talk open and honestly about something, I just kind of get slapped with the, oh, you're so strong. Oh, you're resilient. Oh, it's just like, what doesn't kill you make you stronger? And I don't know why, but I have such a visceral reaction to it. And I really hate it because I feel it's super invalidating and I feel that no one's hearing me. And no one just lets me sit and like wallow. And I know that as a society, we're not supposed to, but it's just really frustrating when you just want to talk and you just want to find some sort of sense in it all. And no one just lets you do that. And so I want to kick off this episode before we get into everything with something a little different, if you'll indulge me. Before we get into all the toxic positivity stuff and what it means and all the real meat of this episode, I want to set the scene here and I want to share something that I've been sitting on that pretty much inspired this whole episode. I have been doing some feeling for the last few months, shall we say, due to the aforementioned stuff that I've kind of gone through. And in the immortal words of CM Punk, shout out to my wrestling fans, I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest. So I figured I'd use this platform to do it. I think in our first episode back, I talked about how I wrote down a rant about resilience and just, to get it out of my head and let my feelings go. And I do this every so often. If I find myself really obsessing over something or I'm really feeling stuff, I'm not really a journaler, but I'll take it every now and then when I just want to get stuff out of my head and just kind of let it go. And honestly, for me, it's in those moments when I just have nothing else and it's just building up and up and up, that works for me. Might work for you, might not. Take it or leave it. But yeah, I just really need to get stuff out of my head. So I just write. I rarely go back and reread it. But in this instance, I want to share this with you because honestly, I wish someone had said this to me and that more of this stuff is out there because I think feelings like this need to be validated, especially feelings that are uncomfortable and you just want to wallow. In fact, I even went and tried to Google what I was feeling and I found a few blog posts, but that was really it. And because no one's really talking about it. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to share some thoughts. And I'm doing this in case anyone else needs to hear it too, because I definitely needed to hear it. So here goes. I am sick of being resilient. I am really, really sick of it. It's not popular to think, let alone say out loud, because no one ever really knows how to react. Especially when someone says, "Oh, you're so strong. Oh, you're so resilient. You're so brave." No, stop it. I would rather be a functioning, ignorant, happy person than be called any of those things again. I am tired of waking up every morning, having to just get up and face the day, needing to do what is required to take care of myself and my future, when all I want to do is just stay in bed, especially when it is often just such a stupid performance. I'm tired of having to get on with life. I'm tired of having to act like a normal person, being functional, being putting on a brave face, be social, put on a show. I'm tired of having to meet society's expectations when what I really want to do is stamp my feet and have a screaming tantrum and cry. But more than anything, I'm tired of having to pick myself up, dust myself off after every setback when life just seems determined to knock me down and kick me repeatedly. And without fail, each and every time, we just have to smile and say, "Please, may I have another?" Plastering on the required hallmark layer of optimism and grit that we must wear to not be deemed too emotional, too much, exhausting, negative, unbalanced, or worse, ungrateful. I'm tired of taking it on the chin and growing, talking about what I've learned from the past, being strong. I'm tired of being resilient. I'm tired of faking. I am just tired. Why does no one talk about this myth of resilience? Well, I think we all know why. Because it's not marketable. No one wants to buy a "just leave me in my sweatpants to wallow and cry" coffee mug, or "I tried to slay all day, but all I did was cry instead" tote bag. I don't want to be a boss babe or an inspiration. I just want someone else to carry this weight for a while, or at least someone to know what it feels like. Everything happens for a reason. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm going to come back a better person. Fuck off. Stop invalidating my feelings, my trauma, my natural emotions, my grief. What if there is no silver lining or life lesson for it all? Why is it always on me to find meaning in my misfortune in order to relieve the discomfort you feel from me telling you the truth about my feelings? What if the only thing we've learnt in life is that life is a cruel place? Life is unfair, and people are just generally not very nice. What if the only reason most of us don't just give up is because we're just so conditioned to just keep going and because having a big old tantrum is no longer fashionable once we enter adulthood? Even as I say this, I can already think in my head of what other people might be thinking. "Oh, well, other people have it so much worse than you. You have so much privilege." And yeah, you're right. I am privileged and everything still sucks. I can't even begin to imagine what it must feel like for other people who have half the privilege I do. At the same time, we also need to stop comparing other people's traumas and competing about who has life worse. This is not a time to measure people's suffering. It is a time for empathy. Stop invalidating my feelings. If I am feeling this right now, I need to talk about it because holding it in doesn't help anymore. In fact, it's making me sick. I don't say this because I want sympathy or pity. I'm just tired. Tired of the brave face, tired of having to get back up and dust myself off, tired of everything feeling unfair, tired of feeling guilty for being jealous of other people's happiness and perceived ease at which some people seem to go through life. I just want to stop having these horrible thoughts of hoping that bad things will happen to other people just so they know what it feels like. I don't want those thoughts. That makes me sound like a terrible person. I don't want to feel that, but I do sometimes. And then just pile that onto the pile of guilt that I already feel. You can tell me to just think positive all you like. Guess what? It doesn't work. Because if it did, I wouldn't be feeling this right now. I want people to A, stop with all the toxic positivity bullshit, because as much as you spout that crap, I don't think you believe it either. Because if it worked, no one would be depressed or miserable. And B, I want you to stop looking at resilience as a badge of pride for others to gawk at, or to look at other people's trauma as inspiration. People's suffering is not there to inspire you. Stop romanticizing other people's challenges and trauma. Strength often comes despite what people have gone through and not because of it. And sometimes people can't be strong, and that's okay, despite what this world tells you. And don't be scared to say it out loud, because I damn wish someone had to me. That felt good. That felt good to say that out loud. And not enough people do. So I hope that resonated with somebody. So now that I've gotten that off my chest, let's get into the core of the issues here. All right. We'll start with what toxic positivity is and why we should abandon it forever. And then, again, I really wish that Callie was here for this, because I know that she was looking forward to it. But I'm going to break down and dunk on some of the most common toxic positivity quotes. So yeah, I will do my best to harness all of the rage that her and I would generate together and try and dunk on it. But then we'll also close out by talking about how to navigate this shit when people spew it at you. So, what is toxic positivity? Toxic positivity describes a situation or belief that a positive mindset is the key or solution to everything, and that people should maintain a sense of positivity no matter how dire or difficult a situation is. Now, I want to be clear that I don't want this to be confused with being optimistic or, positive thinking, which is all about being hopeful and confident in the success of something and being productive in the face of adversity. Although this is nuanced as well, because I'd much rather be a realist, but that's a personal thing. And I don't think, in that, I think is probably the most nuanced thing, is like in face of adversity, just being like, well, just look on the bright side. Like, no, that's toxic. I think it's acknowledging that adversity, acknowledging the downsides of when things go wrong and trying to navigate in a productive way through it. But of course, as I just mentioned, I think there's nothing wrong with having a tantrum about things going wrong as well. Sometimes you just need to get that out. Toxic positivity rejects all difficult emotions in favor of a cheerful and often falsely positive exterior. It minimizes and deflects from any unpleasant emotion, which is really unhealthy and do not recommend. In case that's a spoiler for this episode. Yeah, we don't like toxic positivity around here. Anything with the word toxic in it, I think you should avoid. So, why is this unhealthy? Because life is not always positive, as I think we all know. And being able to process these negative emotions and really difficult life challenges is important for overall psychological well-being. So, what does toxic positivity look like? It's not always just using the feel-good hallmark motivational poster quotes, although there is a lot of that, particularly on social media. If you're on the receiving end of toxic positivity, it could be feeling brushed off when you start talking about problems, feeling like you're not being listened to, or that your feelings are being minimized, being shamed when you don't have a positive attitude, or like, oh, don't think like that. You got to think positive. Like, no. Feeling guilty when you have negative emotions, thinking like, oh, I shouldn't be sad because people have it so much worse than me. That's kind of what it feels like. Bottling up and feeling like you have to put on a brave face. Smile and nod, everybody. Smile and nod. Hiding how you really feel. And then feeling invalidated, whether that be people comparing traumas or minimizing your experience because so-and-so had it worse. It is one of my biggest bugbears. Stop trauma comparing, because it is so damaging for people's relationships in terms of like friendships, relationships, those kind of things. And it really breeds resentment really fast. So let's talk about why toxic positivity is garbage. So the first thing is it totally invalidates people's feelings and shuts them down. So here you are reaching out for help, and then you get fed this, just think positive, oop, end of discussion. There's literally no other wiggle room for that. It's just, okay, we're done. It's like, okay, well, I had all of these feelings, and I wanted to talk, but I guess I can't do that now. It doesn't leave anything else open for someone to just be heard. And I think people need to talk about stuff. People need to talk, and other people really just need to listen. The second reason it's garbage is because it denies people with the authentic support that people need to cope with what they're facing. which, let's be honest, is just a shitty thing to do, to deny someone support that they need. If someone needed physio for a bad knee, you wouldn't be like, oh no, just think positive. You just, oh yeah, with that negative attitude, you can't be like that. Just will your knee to be better. Yeah, I'm sure that would work. I think a lot of the time, while there is nuance, but treating mental health the same way you treat physical health, because oftentimes it is so linked. The third reason toxic positivity is garbage is it's a form of shaming. By shutting you down, it leads you to think that and feel like negative emotions are bad things and that you're spreading negativity by talking about it. That's not the case. There's no reason to feel bad or feel guilty for having negative emotions. They're natural, they are normal. It leads you to think that you can't have difficult conversations and you can't talk about difficult things with people. And in some cases, it means that you can't. If they just keep throwing toxic positivity back at you, that means that you can't talk to people and it damages relationships. The fourth reason toxic positivity is trash, it makes people feel guilty. If you're on the receiving end of toxic positivity, it sends a pretty strong message that if you aren't finding a way to be positive, even in a tragedy, you're doing something wrong. It just compounds what that person's feeling by making them feel guilty for having these feelings that you didn't ask for these feelings, they just happen. And then someone shutting you down and saying, well, you just need to think positive. It's like, oh, okay, that must mean there's something wrong with me. Oh no, I feel guilty about that. And that's just a really shitty thing to do to somebody. You shouldn't make people feel guilty for feeling anything. The fifth garbage reason is it's avoidance. If you are constantly dodging negative emotions, then you can develop this mechanism to just avoid them whenever they come up. And it can lead to repressed emotions and burnout. And I get it. This kind of stuff is uncomfortable. Dealing with negative emotions is uncomfortable. And no one likes to sit in discomfort. But just because you can't sit with it, don't deny someone else an outlet for the fact that they are finding things tough right now. And if you keep doing this and keep spouting toxic positivity, don't be surprised if people stop confiding in you. And if you're wondering why people might not be coming to you for things like this anymore, or relationships are changing, maybe that's why. And if you're the one who's engaging in toxic positivity, it's stunting your emotional growth because by avoiding uncomfortable situations, you're not actually able to work through tough situations and develop essential life skills. And I think learning to sit with discomfort is a really important skill that we all need to learn because, as we've very much established, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, life isn't easy. Life has a lot of uncomfortable situations. Oftentimes, it's really uncomfortable on a daily basis. So I think we all just need to learn how to sit with these negative emotions and just listen. But more on that later, on how we can navigate all this stuff. The sixth and final reason toxic positivity is garbage is it's a form of gaslighting. Yes, really. If you're constantly being fed toxic positivity, it can create a false narrative of reality, often causing you to question what you think and feel, or if something is really that bad, or that you're wrong for feeling a certain way. In the worst cases, this can actually be abusive and a form of abuse. An abusive person might use toxic positivity as a means of dismissing and minimizing another person's emotions and experiences. They might even use it as a way to downplay the seriousness of their own abusive actions. So it's not just annoying and stupid. Toxic positivity can really be dangerous when it's weaponized by someone who does not have your best interests at heart. So let's get through some examples. So let's wade through the toxic waste together, shall we? Let's start with my absolute unfavorite. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Ugh. I absolutely hate this one so much. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about on our trauma episode, which is trauma actually changes the brain and damages the brain. It changes our neural pathways. And when something traumatic happens, it has visceral reactions. And this idea of, having a lot of shitty things happen to you, it really can take a toll on you. Why do we reserve this quote to glorify someone else's trauma? I put up a post recently on our Instagram which said, it is completely unfair that even though you didn't choose it, cause it, or want it, it is your responsibility to heal it. This is unfair. Why is it up to the people who have had trauma to turn it around and make it and find purpose in it. Sometimes there is no purpose in it. There really isn't. So stop trying to say that, oh, just use it as a means of growth. I don't need to grow from this. I don't need to. I didn't need it in the first place. I don't need you. I don't need someone to tell me that it's for my benefit. And I certainly don't need someone else telling me that this traumatic event is beneficial to me, because I certainly didn't ask for it. And does that mean that I want to be able to find ways to grow outside of something traumatic? Why does it have to be something traumatic that will make me grow? It seems really counterproductive to me. A lot of people, when bad things happen, they often feel damaged, like damaged goods. And that's a really horrible thing to put on someone, to say, oh, we'll just find the good in it. And, we'll just use it as a means, like, it didn't kill you, so it will make you stronger. I think we really just need to just remove this quote from our vocabulary, because it does way more harm than good. Because again, it's dismissing the fact that this trauma has happened, and it then puts the onus on you to fix it. And that is unfair. It is so unfair. And almost it puts this expectation of, come back to me when you feel better. As in, we can't talk about this anymore because now it's on you to feel better about it. I do think a lot of these sayings and quotes do come out of good intentions, but then, as usual, it gets co-opted by the wrong kind of people who just want to use it as a means of deflection to, I just want to move on. Let's just move on. And it's like, some people can't move on. Okay? Some people cannot move on from this as fast as you can because you haven't experienced it, or you don't have as much of an emotional attachment to this. I think Callie put up a great post a few months ago, which was all about this idea of people making you stronger. Go follow Callie on calsand.support on Instagram, because she has a lot of great nuggets of wisdom. So she posted, you don't need to buy into the narrative of trauma making you stronger. And that's what this whole toxic positivity quote is all about. She followed up by saying, quote, let me explain. If it made you stronger or taught you something, then that's great. If it didn't, I'm 100% certain that you aren't alone in your experience. You don't have to force yourself to create meaning or focus on the positives. If it was shit, you didn't deserve to go through it, and you're not alone, end quote. And that hits the nail on the head perfectly, because you don't need to find some sort of strength in this. And I'm not saying that, you can't use trauma as a building block for being something stronger, but as always, it requires nuance. And it doesn't apply to everybody. And that's what toxic positivity does. It's a blanket rule for everybody, regardless of your situation. And that's why it needs to stop. And that's why we need to just abandon this stupid quote. I could keep going. I could keep ranting about this one for a long time. So I'll save room for the other ones that I've got. But on a similar note, the next one is another one of my unfavorites, which is, everything happens for a reason. And it kind of is the same kind of vibe here. It's this like, oh, you just got to find some meaning or silver lining in bad things that happen. It's like, what if there is no reason? What if there is no reason? And look, I'm not shitting on religion, but it does come up a lot here of like it's all part of God's divine plan. Look, I'm all cards on the table. I'm not religious. I don't believe in a higher power. And especially after a lot of the stuff I've been through over the last couple of months, it has certainly shaken my, form of spirituality. Me personally, I don't believe that there's anything governing our beliefs. I'm not even sure I believe in fate anymore, because there are so many terrible things in this world. I don't understand what possible reason there could be for all of this horrific evil and suffering that's in this world. Why should someone else suffer to teach other people a lesson, or to teach a lesson in it all? That seems really fucked up. Not everything happens for a reason. Sometimes bad things just happen. And a lot of the time, bad things happen to good people. And it sucks. It is not up to me to find the silver lining in bad situations. You don't need to find silver linings in any of your traumas, because sometimes bad things just happen. And it's unfair. Life often is unfair. So I don't believe that everything can happen for a reason. Maybe there is some sort of, this is when you get into like really philosophical debates of, is fate a thing? Are our entire lives mapped out for us? and we're completely powerless to change what is laid out for us in our lives, which to me seems really sort of passive. I don't think I'm a passenger in a narrative that my entire life is predetermined and I've just got to kind of just go with it, because then that just kind of absconds you of any kind of personal responsibility and accountability. Like, this is the thing. Life is full of nuance. Multiple things can be true at once. And by putting one band-aid solution across everything is not helping anyone. The third quote I want to pick apart is good vibes only. Talk about putting pressure on you to be constantly positive. This is what particularly in like workplaces of like, oh, we're only doing good vibes today. It's like, okay, well, what if I had a really shitty day or had a really shitty experience? Or if, I don't know, I I'm just having a bad day because of hormones, or I'm tired, or I'm in pain, or I had to face some really toxic shit with a coworker, or someone was really rude to me on the street, or I experienced weight stigma on my commute into work, or any kind of unfavorable interaction that kind of ruins your day and puts you in a bad mood. Oh no, you can't do that because good vibes only. It just completely dismisses the fact that some people have bad days. Instead, how about, hey, I'm going to have welcoming vibes today or honesty vibes today? Maybe not too honest, because I would take advantage of that and be like, well, if you want honesty, hold your horses, because I've got some things I want to talk about. It just completely, it's so dismissive. The only time good vibes only is an applicable statement is when we're talking about vibrators. No one wants a bad vibrator, only good ones. Enough said on that. The next one, and this is not really a saying, but more, something that people do in toxic positivity, and I've already mentioned it, but it's matching stories and comparing. Say you're struggling with financial pressure and someone says, oh, that's not so bad. I was homeless once. Or you just lost your job and someone thinks it's appropriate to say, oh, my neighbor lost his job and he has 3 kids. So you should just be thankful that you don't have people that you're supporting. Anybody can have shitty things happen to you, and trauma dumping and trauma comparing is not helpful. It doesn't make you feel better. It just makes you feel worse and feel guilty, once again, for feeling bad. It's like, oh, well, I should just, take it on the chin and just be thankful. What? Be thankful that this bad thing happened? No. It's completely invalidating. And please stop doing it. All people need is to say, that is really shitty. I'm so sorry. Or I'm really sorry that bad thing happened to you. Do you want to talk about it? If they want to talk about it, then be, okay, I'm here to listen. Let me know what I can do. I'm getting ahead of myself because all of that's coming in terms of how to navigate toxic positivity. But people will be very articulate in telling you what they need. And half the time, they don't need to hear about how this bad thing that happened to your neighbor that completely invalidates everything that you're feeling. Again, whenever somebody does that, it is way more of a reflection on what they're going through, which is their inability to handle and sit with uncomfortable situations. That is 100% all on them. So anytime someone does do that, just think, this isn't about me, really, is it? No, this is about you. And just yeet yourself out of there, honestly, because if someone starts doing that, then they are not interested in providing you a listening ear or empathy. They are just there to deflect from negative situations or pull you down or make you feel guilty, or just maybe even flex that, oh, well, I know this person and they had it way worse. It's like, okay, good for you. We're talking about me. And I know that sounds really selfish, but also if you've brought this up and that's their first reaction, it's not really a great reflection on them, is it? Just food for thought. The last one, and this is particularly, this was one of Callie's one that she wanted to talk about, but I know how much she hates this one and how rife it is, especially in Fitspo world. It is no pain, no gain. How about no? Just no. This idea, and this again, it is so common in exercise and physical spaces and fitness spaces, of that things need to hurt in order to grow from it. And I guess it kind of also does lean back into what we were talking about at the start, which is what doesn't kill you make you stronger, which is, oh, if something bad is happening, that's good. That means you're growing. And I mean, sure, if you use fitness and muscle logic technically, or if you stress, like if you're in the gym and you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to do strength training, right? What you're doing when you're working out, and the reason you feel sore afterwards is because you have a lot of all of these like little micro tears in your muscles after you've worked out, which will then reheal to become stronger. And that's how muscles get stronger. And probably there are probably people listening to this who are like, that's not how it works, Ash. But it's a very bastardized version of where this kind of idea comes from, is that no pain, no gain. And let me be very clear, exercise should never be painful. And like I just said, after you've done like maybe strength training, or you've done a bit of movement for the first time in a while, and you might have some muscle soreness afterwards, that is perfectly normal. But there is a big difference between muscle soreness and pain. And you should always be conscious of pain. And I think your body is pretty good at telling you what's good pain and what's bad pain. It is almost more well known now that this no pain, no gain thing is actually a myth. Exercise should never hurt. And it certainly doesn't need to hurt to be effective. Any kind of movement is effective because you're moving your body, you're doing what bodies are supposed to move. But anytime that something hurts and is painful, it's an indicator that something is wrong and something requires attention. So please, please stop saying no pain, no gain, because it is genuinely wrong, and it is denying, it's gaslighting your own body to say, no, nothing's wrong, just keep going, everything's fine. Absolutely not. Throw it in the bin. So now that I feel that we have sufficiently dunked on toxic positivity, or at least I hope we have. I hope you feel cathartic in this nutritious dunking. Now we're going to talk about how to navigate toxic positivity and how we can, just a few little tips that I'm going to give you on how to shut it down, move away from it. Some are more gentle than others, some are more direct than others, but hopefully this can give you enough of a smorgasbord of tips to try and dodge this and keep yourself safe when you're dealing with toxic positivity or when you encounter toxic positivity. So the first one is be direct and call it out. So if someone is giving you the toxic positivity crap, shut it down and be direct. Make it clear that this is not helping. And I know this might be hard for some, and certainly with certain people, you might not be able to be. I think it's all on a spectrum, right? Depending on the relationship you have with that person, you might be able to be really direct with that person, say if it's with a family member or someone who you have a really good relationship with, being like, hey, I need you to stop doing that. Let's move on. Or I'll get into more examples. But there are other ones, say it's in a workplace, the way you talk to a coworker, it will be very different to the way that you talk to like a close friend, regardless. So here are some direct things that you can say. So the first one is, I respect what you're trying to say, but you're not hearing what I'm saying right now, and I feel like you're invalidating my experience. Or even softer, but still direct, I appreciate your intention to be helpful, but I'm not there yet. I still need to process this and would like you to just listen to me right now if that's okay. Another way that you can navigate this is when you start a conversation, explicitly note your intentions. And this will come back a little bit later, but just say to them, I just need a rant right now, and I'm not looking for solutions, if that's okay. I just need a rant. And I use this one all the time. Another way you could do it is, I don't find those kind of comments helpful to me because I find them invalidating. And if you want to go on, you can even say things like, I prefer comments like XYZ. If someone's giving you a particular phrase like, oh, just think positive, you can laugh it off and say, oh, well, if it was only that simple, I'd feel better, or debunking other things that way. But I often find them being less effective than being direct because you're just laughing it off. And that could almost like you're kind of challenging deflection with deflection, if you know what I mean. So some people might feel that that works for them, but I personally don't. That's not my favorite, but you can do that, especially if it's like a coworker, right? And you just like, look, I'm not going to be able to change your mind in the next 5 minutes. So just be like, oh, well, if only that worked. I guess that could be a very soft, if you just need to get the hell out of there, or if it's someone that you don't really know very well, that's probably the best kind of situation to use that one. Sometimes it can be hard to say in the moment, like in that moment when you're being fed this toxic positivity. And if you want to, and if you do prefer to be less confrontational in person, which is very common and nothing wrong with that, you can text them about it later and say, hey, I was thinking about our chat earlier. I feel like my feelings were being invalidated when I was talking about insert topic here. And in future, can we avoid saying things such as XYZ? Or if you just want to really ball a move, just say, I don't subscribe to that toxic positivity stuff, so no thank you. But each to their own. It's really up to you of which one you of which approach you want to take. But all in all, the overall thing is be direct. Be super direct and call it out, because otherwise they might not, and especially try to do it in that moment as well. But if you can't, then I totally understand if it's not the right situation. But if you want to, like, you need to call it out when it happens, because otherwise people will be like, oh, I didn't realize that was such a big deal, or they've forgotten about it, or they don't take it on as much. So it's best to call it out in that moment. And honestly, if they continue with it and disrespect your wishes, stop the conversation and say, you're still not getting it. I'm sorry, but I can't have this conversation with you. And then if they keep going, walk away. It is not on you to continue to get them to understand when you have made it very clear that they just don't have the capabilities to comprehend your needs. And that is on them. The second tip that I've got for you is to set boundaries and be very fucking clear about them. You are already doing that if you're being direct with them. But you can also go further and say, like, after the fact, if this stuff continues, I won't be able to talk to you about this stuff, or I won't be able to continue our friendship in the same way anymore. Because if this is like a continuous thing, you need to set those boundaries. Like, setting boundaries is really important. And I have, ended friendships over things like this in terms of people overstepping boundaries. It is a totally normal thing to do and is a very healthy thing to do. Because for me, if someone oversteps their boundaries and doesn't actually listen to what you're saying, or is constantly invalidating your feelings, for me, it shows a lack of empathy, which is a huge thing. And it clearly means that they are lacking the emotional maturity to deal with hard issues. And if they are repeatedly showing that and showing no signs of listening, wanting to change, any kind of indicators of any kind of growth there, then it is the point of like, okay, does this person actually have the capacity to listen to me and be a good friend to me? And if the answer is no, then maybe it's time you reevaluate the friendship or the relationship. Doesn't mean you have to cut them out. Like, sometimes that is absolutely an option. Other times it might not be. But it's more setting those boundaries and saying, I don't think we can have this kind of relationship moving forward if we keep talking about this. So there are certain things that with certain people that you just might say, I can't talk to you about this stuff. And that's fine, but set that boundary. And when you are setting boundaries, make sure you make it clear that toxic positivity is not for you, even if you have to constantly shut it down. Like I said, sometimes you can't always remove yourself from people entirely because it's not possible or appropriate. And that's fine. But it's more constantly setting that boundary and making it super clear. And when in doubt, just stop talking to those people about these kind of topics, because until they work on their own toxic positivity, and as long as you've let them know that this is not okay, because people can't change what they don't acknowledge, people can't change what they don't know. So if you've made it clear, this doesn't work for me, and they are not interested or engaging in any means to improve that, then stop talking about those kind of issues and stop going to that person for those kind of things, and protect yourself. If they don't have the skills or emotional maturity or willingness to try, then they can't help you. And then you're putting yourself in harm's way. The third tip is to set expectations. And I already touched on this in the first point, but I think it absolutely deserves its own point in itself. If you need to chat and unload some stuff or start talking, first of all, ask that person if they have space and capacity to hear it, because sometimes they may not, and that's totally fine. And I know that, I do this a lot with my friends. I'm saying, hey, I'm really feeling a lot of stuff. Do you have space for me to talk about this? And sometimes people say, honestly, not right now, but let's talk tomorrow. And that's totally fine. You can't ask people to hold stuff when their hands are full, you know? So first of all, set expectations of, do you have capacity to be there for me? Because if they don't, then you unloading on them, you're not going to get what you need from that person anyway. So that's the first step. But then the second one, if they are willing to hear what you have to say, start by telling that person what you need from them. It could just be, I just need you to listen. I don't want solutions. I want some advice. I need some perspective. I just need to rant, whatever it is. Once the expectation is set, then everyone knows what is required of that conversation. And then if the person you're talking to strays from that, then you can gently pull them back and just say, I hear that you're trying to solve this problem. Like I said at the start, I don't need solutions right now. I just need a rant. Can you please just listen? And if they keep doing it, either keep pulling them back or just be like, I'm going to leave this for another day because I'm not sure that I'm getting what I need here. And that's totally fine. The fourth tip is specifically for people who might be falling into that toxic positivity trap, especially with other people. The first big tip is to stop talking and start listening. I know it seems really obvious, but this is where the core of this issue comes from. It is people not listening to what other people need and what other people are trying to say. You don't need to have the answers. You don't even need to say anything. Just listen. Yes, it is absolutely uncomfortable having to sit with these negative feelings and these negative emotions. It's not pleasant, but learn to sit with that discomfort, because if you've been avoiding it for a while, it's going to feel really hard. Learning to sit with discomfort is really important as a whole, as a human, for growth. Makes you stronger. But it's just, you need to have that ability to sit and listen. You don't even need the answers. I would rather someone not say anything than say something that dismisses what I'm feeling. Honestly, I would much rather that. I'd much rather sit in silence and just rant. Funny that I'm literally doing just that right now. But you don't need to have the answers. Yes, it's uncomfortable to sit in discomfort, but the person who's talking to you is also uncomfortable too. And they need you to just hold it for a moment. They just need you to hold it. You can drop it at the end. Just hold it and then drop it, because that might be all that they need, is to just know what that feels like to hold it for a while. And then you can let it go. Because oftentimes, particularly if it's trauma, the person who's talking to you can't let it go and they just need to share it. And that is how we build empathy. And empathy, I think, is one of the most important life skills that we have in society. Because without empathy, oh wow, this world goes to shit real fast. The fifth tip I have is to offer support and validate their feelings. Again, this is for those people who have a tendency to dip their toe into the toxic positivity cesspool. Like I said before, you don't need to have the answers. Some people might be thinking, well, what the hell do I say? This is it. Just offer support and validate their feelings. These are some things that you can say is, I'm here for you. I'm here to listen. That sounds really hard. Honestly, that's all you need to say sometimes. Or better yet, literally ask them what they need, because they will tell you. Just say, I hear you. This sounds really, really difficult. Is there anything I can do? Or what can I do for you right now? Do you just need me to listen? How can I support you? Ask, how can I support you? Because that person might not even know, but even just hearing that is really, really helpful. Validating people's feelings is huge. Just saying, that sounds really hard. That is really unfair. I'm so sorry. You don't need to hand out platitudes. You don't need to hand out slogans. You just need to be there. And you just need to listen. Honestly, it might seem like you're not doing much, but you are doing so much by just acknowledging that person's feelings, acknowledging that they're hurting, and listening to what they have to say. That is all you need to do. The last one is to learn to sit with negative feelings. And I think this is really important for everybody in general, but specifically for those who are culprits of using toxic positivity on yourself. Say you're saying like, oh, I just need to get over it. Oh, maybe I should just take this as an opportunity to grow and be strong. And oh, I feel guilty because I shouldn't be feeling like this. Or oh, I'm just so negative. Try and find ways to sit with this discomfort. If you are telling yourself those things, it's because you're trying to avoid discomfort and you're trying to deflect these negative feelings that you keep placing on yourself. And I know it's hard because it's the last thing you want to do, because it does feel so shitty. But this is where a lot of techniques can come into play. For example, things like grounding, which I personally really, really like. So touching something tactile, lying on the floor, something that like holding ice cubes. I've got this isn't a plug, but I have a great Shakti mat, which is an acupressure thing, which is, it's a very physical sensation, doing something quite physical to ground yourself and take you out of that really negative emotion and trying to help you work through it. Anchoring is a really good one. Go back to our trauma episode where Callie talks about anchoring, which is really helpful. Mindfulness, if that works for you, just taking a moment to focus on your breathing, trying to not clear your mind, but, trying to empty your mind, those kind of things. Reframing negative thoughts can be really, really helpful. Like if you're saying, oh, I feel so guilty because I shouldn't be thinking negative thoughts. It's like, okay, well, why shouldn't I be thinking negative thoughts? Okay, well, maybe I am allowed to have negative thoughts. Maybe if I just sit with these negative thoughts for a while, maybe, and everyone has negative thoughts, just reframing those kind of things as they come into your head. Journaling can be really good if that's helpful for some. As the top of this episode shows, clearly I was feeling a lot of stuff and I needed to write it down, and that really did help me. So journaling could be a way to process negative thoughts and just getting it out on a piece of paper. Simply just paying attention and noticing your feelings can sometimes be helpful, and without attaching yourself to them or deflecting these feelings. Again, I think that does come back into mindfulness if that works for you. So just you're sitting there, oh, I'm noticing that I'm feeling guilty for thinking this way. Okay, I'm feeling guilty. Okay, that's a thought. I'll just let that one go. Just let it pass without attaching it yourself to you. I am having the feeling that. I am having the feeling of guilt. When you separate it like that, it can help detach it from you, and it means that you're not clinging onto it and saying, I am now a bad person because I'm feeling guilty. Just one of the techniques. Thought challenging is another really good one, which is even if you do have to force it, of like, I just need to get over it. Well, why do I need to get over it? Bad things happen a lot of the time. Why should I have to get over it? It is actually really unfair that this thing happened, and maybe maybe it's just because bad things happen. That's really sucks. And that doesn't make me a bad person. That's the kind of thought challenging that we're talking about. Also, having a good old cry. That's probably one of my favorites. If you're feeling really bad and you're feeling really sad and you just need to get it out, there is nothing wrong with crying. Okay, people, we need to normalize this. I mean, ideally do it somewhere in private so you don't have people like butting into your space and be like, oh, are you okay? It's like, I don't really want to talk. I just want to cry. Okay. But I think all of these are like techniques that you can do to help manage and sit with and process negative emotions and negative thoughts, rather than deflecting them and just saying, oh, well, I just got to think positive, because that doesn't work. It clearly doesn't work. Okay. Let your feelings out. Don't hold them in or push them aside. And if you need support, ask for it. The feelings will pass, but only if you go through them, because just stuffing them down means that they'll just go away for a short time, or you're putting a Band-Aid solution on it, but it will circle right back around and you're going to have to deal with them again. And of course, I don't want this entire episode to be like I'm ragging on being, on positivity. It's like, well, you can never be, overly positive. I'm like I said at the beginning, there's a big difference between positive thinking and toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is positivity at the expense of everything else. Like and avoiding any kind of negative emotion. You can only go through life with a positive mindset, because it's not helpful to do that whatsoever. I'm talking about approaching things from a place of realism, I guess, and finding that balance between optimism and pessimism. It's the acceptance and acknowledgement that the world is filled with both positive and negative situations, emotions, encounters, situations, all that kind of stuff. The existence of both, and trying to navigate both of them in a semi-neutral way. I know it's a bit rich coming from me because I am such a pessimist. And I have a tendency to expect things to go wrong, because then I'm either proven right or pleasantly surprised. But again, that's a personal choice. And overall, it probably doesn't make me any happier. But, I think when you do deal with a lot of trauma in your life, you almost, especially blow after blow after blow, you almost end up anticipating something going wrong. And maybe it's a matter of, self-preservation. And I'm a work in progress, and I'm trying to work on that to come from a place of neutrality. And that's okay. I'm telling you that's okay, because I'm going through it right now. I just think the reason I wanted to make this episode was because toxic positivity can be really, really damaging for people. It's not helpful, and it's not helpful for other people, but it's also not helpful if you're using it on yourself. To summarize, you're just deflecting either from negative emotions from yourself, or you're dismissing other people's genuine concerns and feelings about stuff that they're going through. And if I'm listening to a friend and they are talking and I really care about this friend and they're having a really hard time, I don't want to make them feel bad for having these feelings because I care about them and I never want to make them feel bad. And I think if we just approach things with a little bit more empathy and patience and nuance, God, nuance is the word of the day, isn't it? Then I think we're in a better position to be there for ourselves, be there for our friends, and be there for other people who just need that little bit of extra support. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Well, I don't know about you, but that was cathartic for me. It was very weird sitting here just talking into a microphone for however long this episode is. So if you're still here listening, thank you for indulging my rant. And I hope this resonated with someone else because I needed to hear this a few months ago and I couldn't find something that was out there. So I figured I'd just do it myself. Thank you for staying with us in terms of change of scenario, change of situation. There will be some episodes where it's just me. I'll ideally have guests because this talking into a microphone thing is weird by myself. And I always like to have someone else to talk to. But I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you got something else out of it. And if you like it, share it with a friend. Share it with someone who might benefit from listening to this. I'm not saying that that's a reason. If you were sent this podcast, I'm not saying that you are guilty of toxic positivity, but I think it's all a matter of self-reflection, right? It's always important. Anyway, I talked long enough. That's all for today's podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And if you like what you hear, please consider giving us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps with engagement, growing the pod, getting our little episodes into other people's feeds. It really does help. So we would appreciate that. You can follow us on YouTube and Instagram at Paved with Gold Pod. Send us an email at pavedwithgoldpod@gmail.com or visit our website, pavedwithgoldpodcast.com. We always want to hear from you, guest suggestions, episode suggestions, topics, those kind of things. We always want to hear feedback, things that, you want us to see us doing more of, less of, all of that kind of stuff. We're always open for any kind of feedback. So please hit us up. All of those links will be in the show notes along with extra resources. And until next time, stay safe and I will talk to you again soon. Bye. This podcast is general in nature and has not taken your personal circumstances or medical history into account. We are here to share our own experiences and the things that we have found helpful throughout our own personal recovery journeys. Please remember that each person's journey and circumstances are different, and not all of the information contained in this podcast may be relatable to you. It's important you consult your own GP or recovery team to seek out tailored advice before making any important decisions relating to your own health and recovery process. If you have found any of the content in this episode distressing, please contact your care team or a medical professional. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs help now, please contact emergency services in your region immediately.